I don't know. Good morning, everybody. It's Monday, so we all know that means it's another episode of Chatting with Agnes and Cecilia. Thanks for joining us. We're brought to you by Rogue Tulips, LLC, and Rogue Tulips provides 501c consulting services and association management services. We're looking for our first AMC client, so keep us in mind if you're looking for help. I'm Cecilia Sepp. I'm the principal and founder of Rogue Tulips, and I'm here today with my co-host, colleague, and friend, Agnes Amos Coleman. Would you like to say hello, Agnes?
Sure, Cecilia. Thank you so much. My name is Agnes Amos Coleman. I'm an author and a consultant with Rogue Tulip. Over to you, Cecilia.
Thanks, Agnes. And today we're really excited to have as our guest Michael Butera, who is a well-known governance expert and the newest member of Rogue Tulips Network. Would you like to say hello, Michael?
Hello to everybody, and I'm so proud to be a part of the network.
Thanks. And Michael, today we are talking about something that you work on quite a bit, which is dynamic and productive boards. So our first question for you today is, how would you define a dynamic and productive board?
You know, I'd say that a board that is productive and is dynamic, those two things, are boards that think in the future and are not bogged down by all of the procedural gobbledygook that we've come to understand. So to be short and direct, we want boards and board members individually and collectively to be curious about being a board, not just curious and understanding about the discipline or the industry in which they represent.
Well, so Michael, what do you think is the biggest obstacle to creating that mindset of being a responsible and active board and learning what your job really is?
I would think it's two things. One is the inability to be curious about being what a board is. Because we're dealing with relatively smart people, they know their discipline extraordinarily well. They know their industry very, very well. And so they bring that to the table. So when they're asked to do something, they do it in the context of how it is that they've already done their life's work, which they're very good at. And the second thing is that we're challenged by what the real trends are that we're facing. And for me, there are only three big trends that we have to deal with. I'll give them to you real quick. Technology, in a broadest context.
Right.
Globalization, whether you're a small community association or the biggest association in the world, the whole idea of the globalization impact on us is great. And the last one I hope that we get a chance to talk about is what I refer to as cognition. And that's this whole idea of learning, understanding, and moving forward instead of us being stuck in the traditions and the orthodoxies of the past.
Wow, and I bet Agnes has some comments on cognition because she does a lot of work in the education area.
Ah, great.
Agnes, do you have?
I think I think that's a great point. One of the things, and I really like your thought process, Michael, on a board that's futuristic in its vision, and that cognition about a board, because a lot of that process is about having a board that is very creative and it's able to turn challenges into opportunities for the association, because that's what's going to differentiate that association from another association. And to be able to do that in that cognitive mindset, it's about taking risk. And I think that that's so key there. And that's why I'm kind of nodding and agreeing with a lot of what you're saying. It's so relevant, Cecilia. Having a board that's willing to take risk. We have a lot of board members that are not risk takers. They just want to follow the status quo, and that's not going to make the difference.
Yes. And so, Michael, would you like to build on that?
Yes, if I may. It's interesting that we've been warned about this for a very long period of time. I brought this along with me. This is a book that had a profound impact on me. It's an old book. It was actually written in 1990-91. It's the Art of the Long View by Peter Schwartz. And it's kind of interesting to me how often what we generally refer to as futurists have told us to think differently. So let's take what Peter said, if I may. He said, how can you see most clearly the environment in which your actions will take place and how those actions will fit with or stand against the prevailing forces, trends, attitudes, and influences? That's 3 decades ago.
Hmm.
And what have boards really done in that period of time to change the way they are? Not very much. Not very much. So, let me take one of the orthodoxies, if I may. Take, for example, the number and size of committees. We have bylaws. They anoint all these
Hmm.
committees that haven't done any work in years and years and years. They make a short little report, or they make up the report. They're too big or too small to actually do algorithm. Why do we have to have the set of committees that we have? Shouldn't maybe we think about task force with short-term issues where they could advocate
Hmm.
for a problem that's right now that has impact for the future? Can we think about the problem today in the context of how it will impact us in the future instead of the way we do it? But the orthodoxy is, hey, the bylaws say we have to have this committee, so let's have it.
Well, and then I
And
say change the bylaws.
yeah, well, of course you would. That would, yeah, it's such a simple answer, isn't it?
It is.
But how many people do it?
But it's one of the
Hmm.
things that's interesting. I share a lot of both you and Agnes's viewpoints on these things, and it's one of the reasons Agnes and I work at a company called Rogue Tulips because we
Right.
think outside the box, and you're now part of our network as well. Because the simple solution is simple and right in front of you and doable, but it is usually the solution that makes you the most uncomfortable.
Hmm.
Yeah, without a doubt.
And that's why, because it's so much easier. Humans tend to be pack animals. And when I say pack animals, I don't mean carrying stuff like a mule, but I mean we move in groups. We're social. So if you're a person who is thinking outside that box, thinking outside the phalanx, as the Greeks used to say, you're thinking in a way that makes other people uncomfortable because you're not going along with it. So boards do what other
Hmm.
boards do. And what unfortunately logically follows is association staffs do what other association staffs do. So they manage their boards the same. And it's the people who don't manage their boards the same or don't educate their boards the same that end up having, I think, the more dynamic, productive board. If you both disagree with me, or one or both of you, please say so. But I think really that's a lot of the problem is people say, well, why can't we do it that way? But everybody says, but that's not a best practice. But I again go back to what Jamie Nodder and Maddie Grant wrote years ago in Humanize. Is it a best practice or what everybody else is doing?
Yeah.
Hmm.
I agree with you as well. Oh, no, please go ahead, Agnes. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to refer back to my point about, board members, for them to be productive and dynamic. They need to be risk takers. It goes back to that point. Are you willing to take a risk and be different and say, we don't want to follow the status quo, we want to do it different? And that means that you're going to go against many voices. But what it does is that you stand out as an association. And that's the key. We don't want to follow a path. We just want to be risk takers and say, we're going to try something new, whether as an individual that's going to make the change or collectively as a group. And Cecilia and Michael, you've pretty much touched on some of the areas of what are the challenges of us not wanting to take risk because we're afraid of what our other colleagues are going to do. We're going to be seen as a rogue in the industry, or it's just
Yeah. That's why I have
Well,
another web series, Association Maverick, so I can say
right.
some other things without taking anyone down with me.
Again, we can learn from the past. We don't have to live in the past.
Oh, I
And
love
we can
that.
learn.
Say that again.
Yeah, I said we can learn from the past. We don't have to live in the past.
Love that.
People misunderstand risk, because they want to survive and thrive, as they always say. Well, surviving and thriving is pretty important, but they sometimes misunderstand what it means to survive. So we get stuck with old thinking or myths. It's like, think of Darwin for a few seconds. People say survival of the fittest. The truth is, he never said that. He didn't say survival of the fittest. What he said is, in the struggle for survival, the fittest win out at the expense of their rivals because they succeed in adapting adapting themselves best to the environment that they're in. And this is a new environment. We live in a new century. Good grief, 1/5 of the century's gone, and we're still calling it the new century.
I know.
You know, uh, that's 20 years, 2 decades gone out of the way. So we have to adapt to this new
Wow.
environment. And boards that do will be strong, positive, productive boards. Boards that don't will not. And they have to break away from, as you said earlier, not willing to take risks. It's really bad. Or another one where chairs rotate in 1 or 2 years. They come in and their big thing is the theme for the conference.
Mhm.
What is that? I mean, was there any research behind the theme, or is what I just believe in my deep heart? I'm not against. I'm not against belief. That isn't what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying it doesn't make sense. So the chairs, they're really a leader among leaders, and their job ought to be more of a facilitator and a steward as much as a leader. And we confuse these words all the time. A strong leader. Well, what we need are people that help others, be willing to take a risk, be willing to see it in a new way, or as you say, the rogue element, if you would, of,
That's
of
right.
where they're at. So that's what I try to get boards to see and understand and do through various processes, obviously.
I think that is fascinating, the Charles Darwin quote, because I have heard that before, that he didn't actually say survival of the fittest. We
Yeah.
just abbreviate it that way. But that quote, if you didn't know it was Charles Darwin, you would think it was from a book about board management
Yeah, that's
or
correct.
development. It sounds
Right.
just like advice you would give a board. That's so interesting. And I also think, in the leadership issue, you do have to train leaders. You can't just take somebody from an industry or a profession, stick them in a boardroom, and expect them to know what to do. And I think, and I'll probably get some pushback on this again, like when I suggested it 2 years ago, I think that boards should be required by the IRS to have 6 to 12 hours of training every year that they are on the board. Because
There's nothing wrong with that idea. In fact, I would second it. There's a need for people to learn to be a board.
Mhm.
It's not that they're not smart. They're smart. But are they smart about being a board? So you make an excellent point.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, they're smart. Thank you for that. But also, they're smart, but there's also using that knowledge and applying new knowledge in a different way. So one of the more successful things I figured out earlier in my career is to help volunteers take what they already know how to do and apply it in a different environment. And a lot of times, it's that just shifting of thought of, well, I do this, I know how to do this thing. Like the example I always give is when I used to work with the otolaryngologist, and I would go around talking to them about marketing their practices. And I would say, you could go down to the local chamber of commerce or to the garden club and talk about what it means to be an otolaryngologist or an ear, nose, and throat specialist. And they would say, oh, I can't do that. I can't do public speaking. And I would say, but you do grand rounds, right? Because all grand rounds it's a huge presentation of a specific case, and you do slides and you answer questions, and then they'd say, oh, you're right, I can do that. So it's just kind of shifting that. And also, nobody knows how to be on a board until they've done it, and learning from doing it is not the best way to create a good board leadership funnel.
Yeah, let me add a point. I don't know if you're familiar with the Heath brothers, but they wrote Made to Stick and Decisive. They have this wonderful thing they call the curse of knowledge. It's really kind of an interesting use of words. People are so smart about what they know that they don't see anything else. It's a curse sometimes to know so much. So if you're in a professional society, like you were just mentioning, why, of course, you know that business backwards and inside out. Does that make you a board member? Does that make you understand a board? Or if you're in an industry where you're the CEO or the COO of an industry, you're pretty used to people just doing what you say. You don't have to expand that out depending upon your own style and so forth and so on. So this whole idea of curse of knowledge is a danger to good boardmanship, even though it demonstrates demonstrates an enormous amount of intelligence on the part of an individual.
I love that
Mhm.
phrase. That's interesting. And wow, this is such a great topic. We're down to like our final 2 minutes here. So let's have some final thoughts. Agnes, what are your final thoughts on this topic?
I think it's important that board members be champion of their organization or associations, and that comes with them being the member of the organization anyway, and the relevant skill sets that they have. But I also do definitely agree that there is a need for training of our board members periodically to help them enhance their leadership skills, and not just enhance the leadership skills, but really getting them to go out of their zone, zone of comfort and become risk takers in different areas of their business. And the different areas of their business would mean making certain decisions that are not comfortable within their peer group to be able to better the goals and the mission of the organization.
That's great. Thank you. And Michael, your closing thought, what is it you'd like people to take away today?
Well, what I'd like to say is I'd like to use a quote by Mark Twain.
I love that.
He's always a good guy to go looking after. He said, 20 years from now, you will be more
Mm,
disappointed by the things that you didn't do than the ones
mm,
that you did do. So he says, throw off
mm.
the bowlines, sail away from the safe harbor, catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, and discover. We do that, we're going to have great boards.
That's
That's
wonderful
great.
closing advice, Michael, for our boards. Thank you so much. And again, welcome to the Rogue Tulips Network. We're looking
Well,
forward to working together with you to help clients in the
yeah.
future. And Michael, if somebody wanted to contact you directly, how would you like them to do that?
The best way is probably email. So I can be found at Michael B at associationactivision.com.
Great.
So
Thank you.
thank you very much. It's been a pleasure being with both of you today.
Thank you. And
Thank you,
we hope to
Michael.
have you back. We have repeat guests when they have a lot of information to share and knowledge like yourself. So for Agnes and Michael and
Great.
the Rogue Tulips Network, I'm Cecilia Sup, saying thank you for joining us, and we'll be back next week with another topic. And if you'd like to learn more about Rogue Tulips, you can check us out at roguetulips.com. We're also big supporters of the 501c League. We're all members of the 501c League. And it is a membership organization for everyone in the association community and the people who love them. So check out the league at the 501cleague.net. The league's also offering an ethics course and a component relations course that provides CAE credits. So you can check out that information as well. So thanks for joining us and have a great rest of the week.